Got a couple questions for you.
Fire
What kind of started this? I know the pandemic hits and you know, looking for different things to kind of do as well. I mean, you probably had a lot of free time all of a sudden out of nowhere. And I know you like helping people, so I know you had said something about wanting to do something that helps people. But what actually made you think, like, let me go YouTube, let me go
So it was kind of tricky, right? Because like, I think, you know, I've always been told that I've been, you know, mature past my years. I really don't know what that means exactly, but I've always been very like in tune with like what my skills are. And I think one of my skills is the ability to kind of speak. And I've always kind of felt like my voice is sort of, I don't want to say carried power, but I've always just felt like when I've said something, for some reason it seems to hit home for people. And I was like, I just feel like, you know, now with the whole COVID thing, right? During that period of time, I was like, you know, how can I utilize my skill set and still pursue that passion, right? Because we talked about passion earlier and how if you're not pursuing the passion, you start to lose that fire in yourself. And I was getting lazy, I was getting dissatisfied with myself, and I would always, everybody watches YouTube, right? It's such a big thing now. So it was like, I had always thought about doing a YouTube channel. I just really had no idea what direction it would go in, right? So it was kind of a combination of looking at my skill sets and looking at where I thought my strengths were, as well as trying to fall within that umbrella of pursuing the passion of trying to help somebody. And the big thing for me was that, like, the big point for me was when George Floyd was killed. And I had made, for some reason, I just felt like I needed to speak about it. It was just on my heart. It was just heavy to me, and I felt like I just had to express myself. So I took a video and I posted it on Instagram, and it got a huge response, you know, and it got such a positive response that I thought to myself, I was like, that I might be onto something there, right? Like that might be where like my realm is. So I started to think like, all right, well, how can I create a channel where I can speak but also help somebody, right? So I started to think like, well, what if I just come on and let people like sort of share their story? Because like I came to the realization early in life that communication is so important, right? It's like my parents separating was a lack of communication, right? And it was crazy to see that, but it's the truth. And it was like seeing the polarity of the world at that point in time, seeing how connected but divided everything was. I was like, I just don't feel like people communicate enough, right? Because any problem, I hope, can be solved with a form of communication. And I was like, so now how can I web that in? So then I started to think like, what if it was kind of like an interview, like Joe Rogan podcast was a huge inspiration for me.
Yeah, that was gonna be another question. Is what were some of your inspirational people?
So like the Joe Rogan podcast was a huge inspiration for me, and I was looking at it and I was like, I feel like I could do that. Like I feel like I could be the Joe Rogan, and then I could have a guest on and we could just talk about life and just kind of shoot the stuff and just allow people to speak and have their voices be heard. And I was like, well, what is kind of the glue, you know, to the whole thing? And that's when I kind of made that realization of people kind of sharing the novel of their life, right? Because every day you wake up, you're writing another page, you know, in your novel. But the problem is that, and again, Joe Rogan podcast made me realize this, only the 1 or 2% of people, the rich, the famous, the people that have influence in life, have an actual platform to really speak about something. For the 98% of us, we don't have a platform to express ourselves and to let our voices be heard, which is so crazy to me, right? Because the 98% will always rule the 2 in most scenarios. And it's like, why is it that the 98% is silent, but the 2% is vocal? I was like, that seems so backwards to me. So I kind of connected all of those pieces together, and it kind of culminated in this. And it was funny, right? Because one of the hardest parts about the channel was trying to find out what I was going to call it. You know, and I was like, what's a name that I could do? What's something that would kind of make sense to the channel? And I was like, well, another thing I looked at was like the Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett, you know, Smith. And I was like, I like that name because it was very self-explanatory. They sit around a red table and they talk. Red Table Talk. So I was like, what am I going to have my guests do? They're going to sit down. So So I was like, what are the most of the people that are gonna watch do when they watch my stuff? They're gonna sit down. So I was like, what about the sit down?
Did you have any other ideas to call it besides that, or was that kind of always the one that just you kind of went with?
So there were a couple of other names. I don't remember. I know that it's on a piece of paper, probably over there somewhere, that I could probably pull up and see. But I know because I was trying to web my name into the name of the channel to make it relevant. Because I wanted it. I thought about this Jay-Z verse. You know, he talks about, "I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman."
Yeah.
Right? Like I want to be like almost like an LLC, right? So I was like, so how can I keep my name involved in the channel just so people understand who's bringing them the content, right? So I was like, if it's going to be called The Sit Down, then what if I just name the YouTube channel my full name?
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe I'll do that. And then I played around with calling the channel The Sit Down, but then what I did was I did some research. So I went onto YouTube and I typed in The Sit Down to see what would come up. And there wasn't much. There was a lot of stuff there. There was YouTube videos, music videos. There were the sit down with other people, and I was like, okay, so type in my full name. Nothing was there. I was like, okay, that's an empty domain that I could fill. I could fill that space.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of where the whole name sort of came from, as well as the domain for the YouTube channel. I was trying to find a niche where I could occupy, an empty space and not have there be cross sections and overlay, right? Because I didn't want to confuse people. That was the last thing I wanted to do, was have there be confusion. I went to go look at your channel, I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to do that, right? Because I know.
What made you think to do that? Like, cause like you said, if you hadn't really thought it through, you may have just called it The Sit Down.
Yeah.
And you would have had. What made you think that to research and figure out that there is something? I need to find this hole and that. Was there anything in the past that had made you think that, or anything you read, or anything like that? Or?
So a lot of it came from reading, actually. Okay. I know you'd ask me. So because the camera is stacked up on books right now. That's how awesome this is. Yeah. And I had mentioned some of the books. Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Thinking Big, The Master Key to Riches, things of that nature. Slight Edge, right? And in those books, it talks about problem solvers being the people that make it in life, right? And although it wasn't necessarily a problem, I was thinking to myself, how can I create some kind of a solution? How can I find some kind of empty domain, right? Because I was looking at all the big shows, right? You look at a Joe Rogan podcast, he made it relevant. He occupied that domain with his name, the Joe Rogan podcast. So not only did he occupy a domain, but he also found something that was totally unique to himself. I look at a show like the Pat McAfee show, right? That's why the name thing kept ringing in my head, because I'm looking at all these big channels, and a lot of those channels had I don't want to say the star, but the major person's name inside of the actual name. So I was like, well, I can't do like the sit down with Colin Rodden, because that doesn't make any sense, right? Because then every time they think that I'm going to be the person, and that's not my goal. So I was like, it came from a lot of really studying and just mindset stuff, in the sense of, because you look at a problem solver, what do? They identify a need, they address that need with a solution, and boom, it takes off because there's nothing else there. So I was like, so how can I address a need? How can I create the solution? And how can I get it to stay there? Yeah. Right?
Have you always thought that way, even when you were younger, or is this something that you've kind of grown into, or something like that?
No, so it was kind of a combination of both, right? I think being mature past my years, I've had the ability to understand things that I shouldn't have understood at a younger age. But even though you understand, knowledge is applying, right? You can understand things, but knowledge is applying what you understand. And for me, I learned that the more that you can learn from somebody and then apply to benefit yourself, the better you become at doing the dance of life, right? So a lot of it came from learning from other experiences that I've had in the past, like you had said, right? And a lot of it came from me really applying myself and thinking to myself, who do I want to become in life, and how do you get there, right? Because it's like everybody has this vision of what they want to be, but they have no clue of how they're going to get there. And the reason why that, in my opinion, the reason why that is because people are much more willing to work on the external things in life because it takes less effort and it takes less pain and it takes less internal dialogue to figure it out. When you have to try to find what you want to be, why you're not there, and how you're going to get there, you have to ask yourself the tough questions, and you have to be real with yourself and be honest. And honesty hurts. That's why a lot of people can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people that you see that are the most truthful people in life don't have a massive circle around them, because they're not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what you need to hear.
Right.
And people really, some, don't have the ability to hear what they're supposed to hear and then not take it as a personal attack, because it always comes down to the individual and trying to find a way to be better. Right?
Yeah. I think you can't surround yourself with just people. You have to find people that'll keep you straight, like you said.
You have to, and I will put a lot of it on the people that I've met in life up to this point. I'm so blessed beyond belief to have awesome parents that poured into me. Having an older brother who was such a good influence on me, somebody that I idolize to this day. Getting connected, to a team of people, a couple of years ago that really introduced me to reading, and reading with a purpose, and reading for stuff you need, not for stuff you want.
Yeah. How did you find, the group of people that influenced you, or what that you're talking about, taught you how to read? Where did that come from?
It was interesting, right? Because I had got connected to them through a friend of mine. It was actually a former patient of mine, which is so funny. And he got me connected to this group of people. And in episode 16, when I sat down with Natalie, we had talked about the whole MLM thing, the multi-level marketing. Well, I was a part of Amway for a while, and there was a mentorship team, and they all really revolved around the mentorship, right? And for me, that was the whole reason why I went there. It wasn't I don't like the MLM thing, in my opinion. I really don't. But I really enjoyed getting around people that were driven to be better, driven to enhance their mindset, driven to enhance their life through working on themselves, right? I think nowadays, a lot of people are so focused on trying to change the stuff around them, not realizing that the stuff around them is always going to be in direct correlation to the person that you are within yourself. The environment is you. What's around you is a replication of what's inside yourself. If your situation sucks, it's because you suck. If the situation is great, it's because you're great. It's not a coincidence that the people that are most happy in life are the most happy with themselves. It's not a coincidence that the people that are most successful see themselves in a way that allows them to be successful. You can't get the external stuff in life without first getting it here. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of go astray when it comes to life. Because again, in order to be a better person, you have to realize that you're not where you want to be. And that's hard, that hurts. Because you think you're doing really well, and you have to realize and be real with yourself and say, I might be doing okay right now, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not doing what I want to be doing right now. So you have to ask yourself those hard-hitting questions, and you have to be willing to cause self-pain to heal, to create that self-love. And it's not easy, and you do dig up a lot of skeletons, and yes, you do cross a lot of bridges that you don't want to cross. But if you don't do that stuff now, you're going to pay the price later in life, where now you're 50, and now it's significantly harder to try to change your life to be a better person, because you have all these things around you that have been set in place by that gross person that you are at that moment. So it's one of those things, everybody has a price to pay in life to get to where they want to be. The price tag doesn't change. If it's $1 million, it's $1 million when you're 10 or when you're 80. And obviously that's figurative, but when I talk about a price tag, everybody has a price that needs to be paid to get where you want to get to in life. Why not do it now? Why not do it early? Why not do it when you're young, where you can actually shoulder that burden and deal with those failures, and deal with people telling you no, or saying, I don't understand your vision, or not supporting you like you expect them to. That's the crazy thing that I love about this channel, is that everybody says they support you until it's time to actually show it, and they're nowhere to be found. And that's life, man. That's life.
Yeah, and then if you do show up though, that shows the character.
Correct. And that's why I'm so grateful too, because I've learned, like yourself, like I was never expecting you to send the message that you did, Josh, but you did. And that shows me where we stand with each other, and that shows me who you are as a man, as a human being, right? Because you reached out of no will other than your own, and you said that really nice stuff, and like, that's why I'm kind of so passionate about it, because it's like, to know that it affected you in some positive way, in that you felt strongly enough to reach out to me to tell me that, on to something. On to something.
No, I mean everything I said. Like, I'm really proud of everything you've been doing, and you're doing a great job at it. To kind of change up a little bit, what's the first thing, or what's the biggest thing in the past? What's it been like? 11 months or so that you've been? 12
So
months?
I started in, I think, July. So coming up on a year pretty soon. Yep.
What's the one of the biggest things that you've seen as a change in yourself because of doing this? Have you seen much of a change in yourself? Or?
Definitely. I think with, and again, and it all goes back to COVID, which is something I'm so grateful for, because I'm never going to forget that 2020 year. That was such an influential year in terms of my growth as a person, because even though you might know what you need to do, it's not until you actually do it that things start to move, right? And I really kind of adopted that I'm not going to be on my deathbed with what if questions. Abolish the what if question, right? It's like, oh, what if I had done that? Or what if I had done this? Why say what if? Why not say when I do it? Or I'm going to do it, right? It's one of those things. The whole reason why the channel started, part of it, was because I started to get that doubt, or that what if, like, I'm gonna let 10 years go by and then I'm not gonna be able to do it. I'm gonna sit back and look and say, what if I had done that? Or what if I had taken that pursuit? And I came to the realization that, I'm not gonna go down with what if questions. If I wanna do something, I'm gonna do it. Even if I fail, so be it. Like you said, I'll fail forward.
Yeah.
I'll fail and I'll grow and I'll change and I'll be better.
Yeah.
And kind of the thing that really sort of was a motivating factor for me was just seeing, how short, life can be. With COVID, 500,000 plus deaths just in the States alone. And it's still being a relatively prominent thing right now. It's like, we don't know if we have tomorrow. Like, I'll be damned if I'm gonna not do something that I should do today because I'm taking it for granted, because I'm assuming that I'm gonna have tomorrow. I don't know if I have tomorrow. I don't know if I'm gonna wake up. I hope and I pray, I pray to God that I'll get tomorrow. But you just don't know that. And it's like, when you start to take things for granted, you get taken for granted. And so that was kind of COVID, really. Really was kind of COVID that sort of spurred it on, in a sense. And then just in terms of, like we had talked about too, finding that sense of fulfillment. Like this fills me up. This makes me feel good. This makes me feel like I have a purpose. This gives me a reason to continue to do something, because I'm looking at a big picture. If I can reach one person, that's a job well done. And I had lost a lot of my sense of fulfillment with COVID, because, like most people, I put a lot of my value into external things. Those external things get taken away. You lose value now because you can't do that stuff. Now what? Now what, right? And so for me, I was sitting in my room one day and I was just thinking, like, dude, like, what is going on? Like, I know the world is crazy right now, but why do I feel the way that I feel? Why do I feel sad all the time? Why do I feel such a lack of motivation? Why do I want to do nothing but sleep? And again, I had to cross bridges that I didn't necessarily want to cross, but you had to do it. And I realized that therapy, working, was giving me that sense of fulfillment, because I was able to use my skills and use my gifts, like I had said earlier, to help somebody. And that's when it clicked. I get my goat. I am passionate about helping somebody else. And then that's when the whole YouTube channel started to really kind of connect.
Interesting. What's your next step? Do you have a next step, or are you just going to keep keeping on, or is there a vision for something, or?
So the goal is that this channel gets massive, and it gets to a global stage, and I can retire and just focus on this.
Yeah.
I have very lofty goals to some,
happen,
not to me though, because I really can see that happening, and the amount of support that I've gotten. I don't do it for the support, but when people that have no idea why you're doing it can see a vision and see a purpose and say, listen, this thing has real potential and this thing is really, really special, just keep going. That means something. And when multiple people say it, that means more.
Yeah.
So big goal, obviously get the channel huge, right? Try to, grow as much as we possibly can, just to simply increase the reach. And just continue to try to get more people on, and just try to grow the sphere of influence, and try to do this as a full-time thing, and hopefully, maybe have something like an Oprah one day, or have
like
something, like a Joe Rogan podcast one day, and is it lofty? Damn straight it is, of course. But if you don't have something to chase, if you don't have something to look towards, I mean, you're gonna
nowhere to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's like one of the biggest things you've taken away from like one of your interviews? Do you have anything in particular that like really stands out, or a couple things that really stand out that somebody said that's kind of been profound to you?
Yeah, I have a couple actually. One of them that sticks out right away to me is I talked about him earlier, Bernie. My second ever interview, right? He is such an extraordinary gentleman because he really focuses on behavior, right? And by talking to him and learning what he does in terms of being that behavioral expert, it helped me kind of realize how I think I know a lot about myself, but I really don't know that much about myself. Like in terms of how I tick, what's my form of communication? What level of communication do I do well with? What other forms of communication might clash with me? And that helped me realize that's why I get along with that person, or that's why I don't get along with that person.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with us as people. It was just our form of communication and how we tick are different. And he said something too. He said, always think about something called the 10-10-10 rule. Where do I want to be in 10 days? Where do I want to be in 10 weeks? And where do I want to be in 10 years? And to me, that was so applicable because at that point, I was so young in this whole thing. That hit home for me because it's so true. There's always a level of recalibration that's in place. And pretty much he said, you should always keep in mind, where do I want to be in 10 days? Okay, now what do I want my life to look like in 10 months? Okay, now what do I want my life to look like in 10 years? And it's not necessarily about what you're going to get out of it. It's just keeping yourself focused, right? Because you could be chasing a passion all you want to, but if you start to lose focus, the passion becomes blurry, right? So just that constant kind of recalibration, that hit home for me at least. And then when I was talking to my friend Andrew, actually, he had talked about this part when we were kind of getting into religion a little bit. He said, it's not about what you do, it's about what's inside your heart, and it's always about acting from your heart, not from your brain, in the sense of if you're going to do things in life to look for something back, you're doing it with the wrong heart. You should always try to do things in life with a giving heart, with a caring heart, expecting nothing in return. And God's going to reward you threefold of what you could ever imagine, right? You know that. You study, right? And I could really honestly say, I'll go all day long, but every single person that I've had on thus far has left an impact. We had talked off camera about how selfishly I love doing this stuff because it challenges me and it grows my perspective, and my perspective gets more depth and it gets more width every time I sit down with somebody, because I'm able to see things in a perspective bigger than my own. And so in that sense, I take something away from everybody, and I could quote something from every single interview, right? Because that's just the impact it leaves on me.
But
that's to not have you sit here all day long.
What was it like the first time you did it? Was it weird having a camera up there?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible. When you have a second of time, Josh, go back to the first interview and look at how jacked up the camera angle is. It's like tilted up towards the ceiling, like Mitch is barely even in the picture, like it's all the way turned this way. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Did you turn it towards you because you want to be the center of the attention?
I guess so. But no, it was terrible, you know, and it's so cool because I like kind of going back and looking at that and just seeing how far it's come in such a short amount of time, and that's kind of the epitome of life, right? It's always very rough and jagged around the edges, but with practice and with consistency and with a purpose, you know, things become refined and you start to round out those edges and it really starts to kind of take shape, right? But yeah, it's been a huge difference. Like my editing process, right? So my first video I ever shot, I had the camera like right where you're sitting. And I'd kind of just given people a general idea of what I wanted the channel to be. And I'm sitting there talking. It was literally a 2-minute video, 3-minute video. It took me 4 hours to edit that 2-minute video. 4 hours. Wow. Because up to that point, I never edited anything in my entire life. So I bought a whole new editing software and I was learning how to do everything on my own. So it's like now, I'll be able to chop up this hour and 30-minute video in 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe, and I'll have it be processing, turning it into an MP4 file and getting it up to YouTube, right? So that just kind of shows, you know, how much things have really sort of taken shape in not even a full year, which is crazy.
Awesome to think back at like how it was and how it is now.
And that's why I love putting stuff on the internet because it's there forever.
Yep.
So, you know, I can always go back and let's look at the first interview, then let's look at the 20th. Yeah. And just see how different everything looks now. Like the lighting was terrible. Like the camera angle was terrible. Like the audio was terrible. Like it was brutal. It was so brutal. But what's so cool is that I felt so good about it, right? And I felt like that was the best thing I'd ever done up to that point. Because it was, right? And that's what's so cool about it, that every new video I put up is the next best video. Yeah. So it's kind of like what Tom Brady said, what's your favorite ring? It's the next one. Yeah. Right, it's like, what's my favorite video? It's the next one. Yeah. Because it's like...
Do you enjoy editing now? Like, was it like, when you first started doing it, did you like absolutely hate it because it was like, oh my goodness, it's taking so long? Now that it's kind of more streamlined, are you more okay with it, or you just do it because it's got to be done?
It's kind of a combination of both. It's a pain in the ass sometimes, I'll be honest with you. It really is. Not because it's hard, but because it takes time. Yeah. Right? And a lot of times, the least enjoyable part is the editing, right? The most enjoyable part is this right here, right? And
it's exactly like therapy, though. The best is the interaction with the patients, and then the worst is
the documentation. It's awful. But yeah, no, kind of similar, but it definitely makes it an easier pill to swallow, knowing that I can sit down and in 30 minutes or 40 minutes, I can have it done and be processing. But it's also a fun challenge, though, right? Yeah. And again, perspective is so important in that sense, because if I'm looking at it, and this is so funny too, right? Because for people who are keeping up with me, like these 2 interviews I had, there's another interview coming out soon, just gave it away, but these 2 interviews I hadn't had an interview in over a month up to that point. Because I kind of had to take a step back and realize, okay, number 1, the pace at which I was putting out videos was too high. Yeah. Number 2, I started to lose the joy for it because I felt like I had to do stuff on a certain times table. Number 3, I was putting too much pressure on myself to always have something there. Yeah. At the end of the day, if somebody wants to watch, they're going to watch regardless if it's every day or every month. So I was like, slow down, take a step back, and have fun with it, right? And now I'm not stressed about interviews. I'm not stressed about a time frame. I'm not stressed about anything. This is a hobby. Yeah. This is for fun. Yeah. Right? And it was like one of those things, once I sort of made that connection, then it allowed me to look at the editing in a different way as well, in the sense of, hey, have fun with it. Play around. See if you can maybe do something a little bit different. See if you can add something in. See if you can maybe sharpen up that audio a little bit here, or maybe you could work on the transitions a little bit there, or maybe the audio can go down a little bit so I can turn up the music a little bit in the background. You know, so there's always that level of tweaking in it. Once I sort of reestablished that mindset of, hey, this is for fun, enjoy it, grow, try to be better about it. Yeah. It took a good turn, It's still a pain in the ass, but.
Do you put your stuff onto like a podcast platform or no? Like,
I don't. So it's funny you say that.
Is it something you were thinking?
Because I am thinking about it, and I'm actually I stepped away from doing research a little bit, but probably 2 months ago, no, not even, probably a month ago, my brother had actually contacted me. He was like, hey dude, and this is big for me because my brother, that's literally my role model.
Yeah.
He was like, hey, do you have like a podcast where you can just listen and not have to watch?
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't actually. I was actually thinking about it. It was just, I just don't necessarily know how to go about it right now. And he was like, well, you should definitely do that because like I would love to listen while I'm at work.
I was gonna say I would second that. Not even necessarily at work, but like for me personally, I know there's a lot of people that do it. They just like when they get in their car, they go on a podcast. So it's just I don't even hardly listen to the radio anymore.
Yeah.
So like if you looking to maybe do it, I would say do it because I think there's a lot of people that could really benefit with you doing that.
And well, thank you for that piece of advice for sure because I take that to heart. And I would say this, Josh, that's funny because I would kind of go back and add that into the next step, right? Yeah. The next step is to start getting stuff into a podcast format because when I was doing my research, I found a couple of places that I really enjoyed. And the good thing about it is that, hey, if it takes off, it's going to create some income, which is always good. Yeah. But at the same time, and this is what's more important to me, I will be able to upload things. They will be able to auto sharpen to create a sharper audio for me. So I didn't have to do it because I'm doing everything by myself.
Yeah.
So I don't have help. And I think one of the things that probably discouraged me was the fact that it was going to be a lot of work to get 180 videos into podcast format. Like, I have a lot of videos, right? So trying to find something, which this site did, will be able to allow me to put my stuff out on a good, stable, secure platform that's not going to go anywhere, as well as create the connections for me to put my stuff onto Spotify, onto Apple Podcast, onto these other mainstream platforms where I can further expand the sphere of influence. Because again, it's all about reaching somebody's ears. Right. It's not about trying to do it for me. If that was the case, I would have done. I would have done. I would have done 10 videos and I would have burnt out. Yeah. Right, because I wasn't getting the pat on the back that I needed, or, hey, Colin, you're doing such a good job. I love your video. No. If I was ever doing it for that, I would never have got this far. So, that's actually probably one of the next major steps is trying to get it into podcast format because it is a lot more digestible that way too. I like the visual. The reason why I picked visual was because studying human interaction. Some of the books are how to have conversations and deal with people, how to have power and influence with people, right? Things of that nature. You learn about the communication through body language, right? And how important body language is. And one thing that I thought would be a cool touch is, because I didn't see it in a lot of other platforms, was you get the audio, but you also get the visual stimulation, right? And I thought that would have been a cool touch to do to allow people to not only listen, but watch the interaction, because 1,000 words are spoken without a single word actually being said. Yeah. Right? So that was kind of one of the key driving factors between visual or just strictly audio. Right? So that was one thing that I don't think is ever going to go away, but I do need to try to get it into
I'm with you. Sure. I do prefer, like, if I listen to podcasts or have a choice to watch it, I do prefer to watch it if I can. It's just I've had so much more access to it when it's just audio form.
And that's the thing I'm realizing now, is that it's a lot to ask somebody to sit down and give the video an hour and a half at a time. That's so unrealistic. Yeah. And especially the way the world is now, with how small the attention span has become, because everything is an instant gratification, auto-generated, you get it at the snap of a finger society, that people don't have the wherewithal to sit for an hour anymore. Yeah. And so what I realized, and this is something that I did through studying my own channel and how videos are performing and things like that, I thought, okay, so let me look at big platforms like the Joe Rogan podcast. This will hit home for you. Joe Rogan, what he does is he puts out the full interview in one big clump. So it's a 2-hour and 23-minute video, right? Yeah. And then what he does is, he doesn't do it, he cuts them into smaller pieces to keep the engagement at a higher level and keep it more digestible. And what's happening now is that, I get a 5-minute clip of that video. Now the YouTube algorithm is going to suggest the full interview. Now I have your interest, and now you're more willing to sit down and take in that 2 hours and 38 minutes. Why? Because you got your attention caught by X clip. Now you want to go see the full thing to see what else you can get. So I started to adopt that mentality, because before what I was doing was I would take, let's say for this interview, I would chop it up into 20-minute clips. So it was really confusing too. I'd do 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, 20.4, and there would be different subsections of the interview at certain points. And I was realizing that was more of a demand on people than putting out the hour and 30-minute video in one shot. You take it how you want to take it, and then I'm gonna put out, which is more work for me, I'm gonna take that big video and clump it or chop it into 5 or 6 minute clips now. Very simple, because again, studying, right? Trying to be a student of life. If I want to get to a certain place, I have to look at the people who are there and try to take something from them.
Right. Yeah, and you were saying that you know, learning from other people, it doesn't have to necessarily be people you even know.
Right.
It's like people who have already done it before you, which is big. That's very good insight there.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
The last thing I had is, if you had like one thing to tell somebody, like that you've gained over the past 11 months, or if you want to go all through all COVID, what would be the one thing you would like say to somebody, like, or piece of advice that you would give somebody?
Sure. Good question. I think it really depends on where the person's at, right? Because I think everybody's advice depends on where they are at the moment. You know, what do you need in that particular moment? But if I could give general advice, embrace failure and avoid what-if questions.
Okay. What you talked about that's a hard thing for people to say, to get over what if. What is it? Was that always in you, or did you know, was there something that kind of just clicked in your head and said, I'm going to kind of get over these what if questions?
Well, you know, I think going through life, you always experience things and missed opportunities, and you ask yourself, damn, what if I had just done that? Or what if I had just taken that step in that direction? Or what if I had just maybe been a little bit more aggressive and tried something? And this is going to sound ridiculous, but for me, I was always very shy on girls growing up, right? And still am. I am still a very shy person. But like in high school, we would have these dances, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's always that girl that you find very attractive. And you know, you're eyeing each other, you're looking at each other, but I was always too afraid to go do that. The dance would end, I would go home and be like, damn, what if I just like walked up there and just asked her to dance? Or what if I just started dancing with her? Like, what could be different, right? So I've had those situations ever since I was a kid in high school. And then obviously those are very trivial in the grand scheme of life, but I think once you give yourself the opportunity to do it once, you're gonna repeat habits, right? Patterns repeat themselves. So if you do it once, you're more likely to do it twice, 3 times, 4 times, on, right? So I came to the point where, and again, you know, the last 11 months have really helped, but even I'll turn it back to kind of work. And this is still something that I am asking myself, what if, or what if I don't? I've always thought that, and you probably remember me talk about this in school, I wanted to do travel therapy. I had said that all the time, I wanted to do travel therapy. Well, I've always trying to find the right timing, because obviously when the time comes to do travel therapy, I'm not going to pay for an apartment and be gone, right? So I just re-signed my lease, so that's not going to happen for a year now. And the time, I believe, is starting to dwindle thin, because I'm 26, right? Starting to get older, ready for a family, a wife, kids, all that stuff. So it's like, you know, what if I don't go do travel therapy? What opportunity might I have missed? What if I don't do travel therapy and I potentially missed out on meeting my soulmate? What if I don't do travel therapy and I go to a location that I love and then ends up being where I raise a family? Right? So that's kind of where my mind goes when those what if questions come up. And that's why I'm so firm in my ways in terms of don't allow that to happen. Even if I go do travel therapy for 6 months and I hate it, okay, I did it and I tried, I didn't like it. So be it. But the fact of the matter is now I can close that chapter and say that I can walk away from that with no regrets, and that won't be on my heart, because I really do believe those what if questions never get answers, and that's the most detrimental thing to you being happy with yourself. When you ask yourself the same question 100 times and you can never answer it, you go crazy. You go crazy, you know?
Well, and it kind of ties in with your failure. Like, there's what if questions. A lot of times I feel like people are scared of like what actually may happen.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you can't be afraid of either rejection or failure or not enjoying what it is.
No doubt. Yeah, 100%. And I think that, yeah, like you had said, Josh, I think those two really kind of go hand in hand. And I would say the other thing, you know, a little bit less serious, have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun, man. It's like life is too darn short to be driven by a job. Life is too short to allow tomorrow to influence what you do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Be present, right? That's something I'm working on still to this day. Being present in the moment, enjoying the moment, not thinking about what's next. Be here right now in the moment.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, embrace it, because let's be real, Josh. The likelihood is that this moment will never happen again.
Yeah.
Now, could it happen in a different form? Absolutely it could, but the fact of the matter is that this is an unreplicatable thing. This will never happen twice.
Yeah.
So be there, be in the moment, be present, enjoy it, and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you're not pursuing happiness, you're gonna have a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
You really are. You're gonna have a hard time because it's like, you hear it all the time, the pursuit of happiness, you know, money can't buy happiness. Everything always kind of revolves around that H word, happiness, right? And it's like, you have to just try to find ways and experiment and be willing to see what you like and don't like. Like for me, like a ridiculous example, but this past week of work, I went and watched the basketball games on Wednesday night. I was out way too late and I was suffering at work the next day, but that made me happy in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I did what I wanted to do and I enjoyed it. I'll pay that price when the time comes, but to have a moment of peace and serenity and happiness and to have a memory that you take with you forever, I'll remember that memory before I remember the suffering that I had the following day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I mean by not allowing a job or not allowing something to determine what you want to do in the moment.
Uh-huh.
If you want to do it, do it. Things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, and I did this when I first got into the field, I would do nothing on the week.
Uh-huh.
I would go to work, go to the gym, go home. Go to work, go to gym, go home, sleep. That's it. For like 2 years I did that and I was not happy
Uh-huh.
because I wasn't allowing myself to explore and to venture out and have experiences and create memories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and to finish that story, went out Wednesday, went to Drive Shack on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I was already hurting that day.
Mm-hmm.
Was out way too late at Drive Shack, went out a couple places afterwards. I was dead yesterday at work.
Uh-huh.
But I made it through work, all my patients were happy, I was able to get it done. And when I'm 70 years old, I won't remember how I felt at work, but I'm gonna remember Drive Shack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna remember the happiness that it brought me in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like just being present and trying to pursue making yourself feel good.
Yeah.
Because nobody can do it for you. You know, if you can't create happiness within yourself, nobody else will ever be able to do it for you. Nobody else can do it for you. They might assist you,
Uh-huh.
but at the end of the day, every emotion that you feel is something within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't like it, it's on you to change it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting because I think so many people don't understand how much control they really do have over how they feel. A lot of people, I think, think that life happens to them. No, every situation that you've encountered in life, you've had a part in creating.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Accept that. It's the truth. Any bad situation that's happened in your life, you're a cause. Any good situation that's happened, you're also a cause. So, you know, my dad told this to me when I was young. He said, there's two things you can control in life. He said you can control your attitude and your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see each day and how do you feel about it each day? Those are the only, and really think about it, those are the only two things in life that you have any control over, period. I can't control the weather. I can't control if my car turns on in the morning. I can't control if I have a flat tire. I can't control if I get fired from my job. I can't control if I roll out of bed and break my ankle. I can't control any of that, but I can control this and I can control this. And that's the thing, you know, people don't understand that, so they're giving away the only two forms of control they have in life, thinking that they have no control, not even realizing that they gave it away.
Yeah.
They gave it away. So it's like, just always be present, be happy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Those are great things to leave to people.
Close it out, Josh.
All right. Well, I just want to say I'm proud of you and everything you're doing.
It, man. Thank you
Keep
so
up
much.
the great work.
Thank
I've
you
enjoyed this so much. I'm glad that you even let me ask you a few questions.
Come on,
not
man.
that you would not let me do it, but
of course.
I'm glad.
Come on, man.
Open dialogue is great, and those were some great words of wisdom there at the end.
Hey, well, I'll tell you what, man. I appreciate you. You know, and like I had said earlier, you know, in the former parts of the episode, you know, I'm not here without you. So, you know, and that's the thing. You know, we all get to where we are in life because of the people we met. You know, so you played a part in me being here, man. So I appreciate you, and I respect you, and I thank you, and I'm proud of you.
All right.
You've done a ton of growth, man. But already, y'all. Oh no, I already have an outro. We're good. See ya.